So as I mentioned before Mass started, that during this Mass we're going to have the Rite of Covenant for a lot of teenagers and a handful of adults as well, who are to be confirmed here by Bishop Thomas on May 1st. So I would ask all those teens and adults who are planning to be confirmed to please stand right now. Just stand. I want to see who you are and where you are and so on. All right, good enough. So I'm going to be talking to you, but I hope everyone else will listen as well. You can be seated. 40 days. We heard a lot about 40 days that Jesus spent in the desert. The number 40 is symbolic. It goes back to first book of the Bible, Genesis. During the time of Noah, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and so that 40 was symbolic of transition, change. The people of Noah's time and place were corrupt, so they were all destroyed except Noah and his family in the ark, and they began to repopulate the planet Earth. The next time we hear 40 is in the Exodus. That was mentioned in the first reading today. The children of Israel finally left the slavery of Egypt, and for 40 years they migrated across the Sinai. So finally they entered the Promised Land, going across the Jordan River. A time of change, leaving the slavery of Egypt to the freedom of the Promised Land. Then we hear about Jesus spending 40 days in the desert. And some calculate that Jesus was dead for 40 hours, from 3 o'clock Good Friday afternoon till early Sunday morning. So 40 is symbolic of a change. So all of us, because this is the beginning of Lent, are meant to make a change in our lives, Lent 2022. So how do we come to the number 40? Well, I consider Ash Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday as pre-Lent. How many of you have already broken your Lenten resolutions? Congratulations, God bless you. You are human. So that was just a trial. Today is when it really begins. Let me show you how I count. Today's March the 6th. 26 days left in the month. 5 days gone, 26 left. Add 14 to that, we get to number 40. April 14th is Holy Thursday morning. That's the end of Lent. And then that afternoon, we begin the Triduum. So this is the beginning of Lent. Forget about what you did wrong the last couple of days. So how are we going to observe Lent? What changes are you going to make during these 40 days? Well, listen to the gospel. Those 3 temptations of Jesus are about 3 temptations to which all of us should say no. The first was the temptation of too much pleasure. Jesus was tempted to turn those stones into food, and he said no. So again, I'm not saying be miserable all during Lent, but we give things up, things that give us pleasure. So sometimes you give up candy, you give up desserts, you give up pop, you give up things, whatever. That's okay. But I'd ask you also to give up the pleasure of doing things wrong. The pleasure of talking about someone. The pleasure of making fun of someone. The pleasure of bullying someone. Give that up, not just for Lent, but for good. To take pleasure at someone else's expense is simply wrong. Don't do that. The second temptation is the temptation of possessions. The devil said, Jesus, you can have all these things if you could just adore me. And he said, no. And sometimes we're so attached to things. I have to have the newest shoes, the newest clothes, the latest smartphone, whatever it is. I need things to make me happy. Now, I'm not again saying, move out of your houses, be homeless and live on the streets. That'd be ridiculous. But are we so attached to things? Do they possess us? Do they possess us? Do they control us? We call that an addiction, where I've lost control and something else controls me because these things get in the way. Our teens are probably too young to remember the Great Recession, but it happened in 2008. So what is that, 13 years ago? 14 years ago. In 2008, there was the Great Recession in this country, around the world. And many people lost millions of dollars in the stock market and the highest suicide rate this nation has had since the Great Depression in the 1920s. When they lost money, they had no reason else to live, so they ended their lives horrible, tragic. They were attached to things. One thing they were attached to was the dollar bill. So again, be careful of that temptation to say no. The last temptation is the temptation of power. Satan said, jump down and God will save you, because it says the angels will protect you and won't let you fall. Jesus said no. So power, I don't know how many of you teens, I know adults have power. In the sense you may be a boss, you may be an employer, you may be a parent. But I think teens have power too. I mentioned it already, bullying. Bullying because I have power over you. I'm better than you. I'm going to make you hurt. Power, leaving someone out. Think of school tomorrow, wherever you go to school. Is there someone there that just doesn't seem to fit in? Can you go to that person and say, how's it going? Who are you? My name is so-and-so. We can use power to hurt people. Yeah, the church talks about power in a different sense. It's called servant leadership. In words, we serve others. We serve others. That's the best way to lead. So those are some of the temptations that Jesus said no to, and I ask you to say no to the same. No to too much pleasure, too much food, too much whatever. No to possessions. Being so attached to possessions, they possess you. No to power. I'm better than you, I'm bigger than you. We call it also prejudice. I'm good, you're bad. So we have to say yes to something. We say no to all those temptations as to Jesus. We have to replace it with strong yes. And the first yes I suggest is yes to prayer. Can you pray more often during this Lenten season? There's so many opportunities here at the parish. I don't know how close some of you live to the parish. Some of you maybe can't drive yet. We have stationed every Friday night. We have a beautiful prayer service this Thursday called Taizé. Anytime you can walk around the church, starting right down there outside, and walk the stations all the way across. The Eucharistic Chapel is open from 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m., 7 days a week. Opportunities to pray. But you don't have to come to this church to pray. You can pray anywhere. I think I've told you the first thing I do as soon as my foot hits the floor, get out in the morning, I make the sign of the cross. A simple prayer. You can pray while you're brushing your teeth. You can pray while you're getting ready for school. Prayer doesn't have to be on your knees for hours and prayer books and rosaries. Prayer is just talking to God like I'm talking to you. Can you find opportunities to pray this Lent? The second yes I want you to say to is yes to penance. That's what we say, giving things up. So again, I mentioned giving up candy and desserts and whatever. How about giving up attitudes that are bad? Always complaining, always whining, negativity. Give up gossiping about others. Give up talking behind people's back. Make that a penance. The little bit of pleasure you feel by making someone bad look bad, is it worth it? You wouldn't want that to happen to you. So give those attitudes up. If you're not very nice to your parents, then give up your mean-spiritedness. Spend more time with your parents or your little brothers and sisters. Give up the ways of behavior that you know are just wrong. Don't do it. And finally, and perhaps the most important, say yes to going on a pilgrimage. I want Lent 2022 to be a pilgrimage for all of us. I'd like to say it'd be a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. I'd love to take you all there, but that's not going to happen. Our pilgrimage is in the desert. We heard that in this gospel reading today. Jesus went out in the desert. It's so easy for us to go to the desert. Just walk into your backyard. My backyard is all desert, all cactus. You can go to Red Rock, you can go to around Lake Mead. The desert is there. I don't know if you live in Manhattan, if you can find a desert, but you can make a desert. Desert really isn't a geography. Desert is a frame of mind. Our theme for Lent 2022 here at Holy Spirit is into the quiet. I want you to make a pilgrimage to a quiet time in a quiet place often, at least once a week. Shh, be quiet, be still. Know that God wants to talk to you. There's so much noise in our world. You know, I have noise in my world. As soon as I get in the car, music comes on. As soon as I get in my house, I tell Alexa, play Elvis. Whatever. We need to be quiet. We need to be quiet. Make a pilgrimage. Lent is a journey. Where are you going to be by Easter? Where will this journey take you? So that's my challenge for all of you being confirmed and everyone listening to me as well. Say no to the things that Jesus said no to. No to too much pleasure. No to too many possessions. No to too much bad power. And say yes to prayer. Say yes to penance. And say yes to pilgrimage. Make Lent a journey. Where will you be? To do that, you need to go into the quiet. Shh. Be still.